So by now, I'm going to have to start doing a count, I guess. I think a lot of us thought this public service strike wouldn't last all that long. We're now into day 3. Pickets are up across the country, and there doesn't seem to be a solution in sight. And at the same time, this is costing, from what we read, millions of dollars every day in lost productivity to the government, to Canadians. So what are we expecting will happen here? Well, let's try to find out what's the government side on this. Greg Fergus is Parliamentary Secretary to the President of the Treasury Board. That's Mona Fortier, and we actually heard from her earlier today. Mr. Fergus, thank you for being here with us today. We appreciate it. It's interesting to hear the President of the Treasury Board say that the demands are, I think one of the words used were outrageous, that the government has offered what is considered to be a pretty fair deal, yet there seems to be no progress at all. So has that changed between 2 days ago and today?
Well, what we've seen is that all the parties have stayed at the negotiating table. They're negotiating in good faith. It's probably well known now that the Public Service Alliance of Canada is seeking monetary wage increases of about 13.5%. Government, following the recommendation of the Public Interest Commissioner, has come in at around 9% over 3 years. But everybody's still at the table. We're still negotiating in good faith, and I have not seen a negotiation what was done in good faith that didn't actually end up with an agreement.
Just out of curiosity, though, that 9% was put forth a couple of days ago, so nothing has moved from since then? There hasn't been any other offer put on the table?
Well, I'm certain there has been a lot of offers and discussions which have been put on the table, but I'm not at the table. And if I were at the table, I wouldn't be. I would keep the negotiations at the table. Well, it's better to do that.
So, meaning we won't hear anything more. We won't hear any numbers until the strike is resolved at this point.
I think that's a fair assessment.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, unless the Public Service Union wants to let us know how badly things are going, because that works in their favor. Look, I want to ask a question. When I mentioned off the top, Mr. Fergus, that there's a lot of money here going down the drain every day, and as to how much this is costing Canadians, and at some point you'd have to think, and I realize now, from what I'm reading anyway, most Canadians are not in support of what these public sector unions are doing. But at some point, when things get worse than they already will be with respect to passport offices and tax returns and immigration services, you imagine Canadians would start getting a bit fed up and then bring pressure on the government to force these people back to work. Is that a likely scenario, do you think?
Well, I wouldn't want to get into to try and imagine the different hypotheticals, but let me put it to you this way. I think Canadians have the right. Of course, all Canadians have the right to seek collective action and to negotiate that way. And so the government supports our public servants. We are very proud of our public servants. We also understand that they have collective demands that they're going to try to pursue. Look, we get there through negotiations in good faith. I think what we need to do is that we have to come up with an agreement that's fair for public servants, but is also reasonable for Canadians. And I think you're right. I think many Canadians would like, as much as we value our public service, and want to make sure that we have a reasonable deal, one that corresponds to their reality as well. But we'll get that through having good negotiations.
Mr. Fergus, we spoke yesterday to Minister Karina Gould, and she kind of gave us an update on what the situation was with the passports, and basically warned us that things are about to get a whole lot worse. I suppose I'd like an update from you as to where we're at with that. I think 49,000 workers have been considered essential. Beyond that, as Aaron mentioned, there hasn't been any back-to-work legislation. How long will this be allowed to go on, and what is the situation if somebody needs a passport or anything like that right now?
Well, and I'm glad you raised this, Natasha. For people, and I'd like your listeners to know that for people who have to go for compelling reasons, for humanitarian compelling reasons, we will be able to process their passports. We have a number of folks who are working as essential services. And when I say compelling reasons, for example, they, if there's a very sick relative that they have to go visit, or if their job depends on it, these are the kind of things which would probably meet that threshold. And there are a number of services that we provide as well to Canadians to making sure that essential services. Earlier in the conversation, you'd mentioned taxes. I'd like to reassure people because most Canadians file their taxes electronically. That will still continue, and they'll be processed, and they'll get their refunds on time when they process electronically. So that won't be a problem. It will be for those who still need to use paper copies that they're going to experience a delay in terms of the processing of their tax forms. But by and large, we're trying to make sure that we provide Canadians with the essential services that they need. That includes getting their benefits, if they're receiving the Canada Child Benefit, which has been a great way to reduce child poverty in this country. They're going to continue to receive that. The grocery benefit to help people, the most, over 11 million Canadians who will need some help with making their ends meet with their groceries. They're going to continue to get that payment. So there's a lot of things which will still happen. But of course, there can't be any strike when people withhold labor without some consequences. There will be some. But I do believe that if we both approach this, with in good faith, we'll come up with an agreement, and hopefully soon.
I'm going to just want to go back to what you just said. I did not understand that at all. My understanding was that regardless of whether you filed your taxes electronically or otherwise, there are going to be delays because there are 40 or 50,000 people out of Canada revenue. You just, I think, told our listeners that if you file electronically, don't expect a delay. Is that correct?
Well, from what I understand, that is correct at this situation. There'll be some things which will the processing of income taxes will certainly, for those who file electronically, there shouldn't be an enormous delay. You'll still be for folks who are doing it by what are called Group 1. And I don't want to get into the weeds on this, but in terms of their regular taxes that they would claim, and if they file electronically, you won't notice a noticeable change in the processing time.
And if you have money coming back, if you have a refund, is there a delay in that?
Again, there won't be a delay in receiving that on the initial one, but of course there'll always be that verification that happens afterwards. Often you file your taxes, you get your refund, and then maybe about 6 months later when they do their regular auditing, or 6 weeks later when they do their regular auditing, there might be some adjustment. But for the initial payment, you will not expect a delay.
What we had been told is that if you are registered for automatic deposit, then no services will be affected. It should be straightforward. However, if you receive an old-fashioned check in the mail, there could be delays on that front. And then I'm just curious,
That is correct, but most people, as you know, do arrange for automatic deposits. Most people have gone electronic now.
That is true. And then just with regards, because we've had a lot of listeners asking that, if there's potentially delays in getting refunds, why is there not being any kind of extension offered in terms of filing income taxes?
Well, once again, because most people will file electronically. I'm talking, the vast majority of people do so. So there will be no change in that service standard. There will not be any. There wouldn't justify a reason having a delay in terms of filing your taxes.
Okay. Look, I will mention. I don't want to say you're painting a bit of a rosy picture here. I'm sure Canadians are happy to hear you say that. If your taxes are filed that way, there should be no delay. We know about this situation in passport offices. We heard from the minister. I'm going to play that clip at you in a minute. There are also delays here in the immigration system, right, for people having their immigration.
That is correct.
So there are some flies in the ointment here. There's no question.
Absolutely, and I don't think I'm sorry if you had the impression, Aaron, that I was trying to paint a rosy picture. I just want to let you know, when people withhold their services, their labor, there's going to be delays. Yeah. There's going to be inconveniences. That's the whole point of a strike.
Let me ask you the question, Mr. Fergus, that you can't answer, please, which is how long can this go on before the government actually has to do something?
Yeah, well, you answered the question. I can't answer that question. That's when you start entering into the art of politics. So we'll have to see when we get there.
All right. I thank you so much for your time. I'm sure all Canadians would like to see this come to an end sooner rather than later. Don't know that that's going to happen.
Well,
but
public support is not there, that's for sure.
Not yet. Mr. Fergus, thank you so much. Appreciate your time today.
It's really a pleasure to be on your show, and hello to all the folks in Montreal.
All right,
hey,
thank
thanks.
you.
Have
Greg
a great
Fergus,
weekend.
Parliamentary Secretary to the President of the Treasury Board. Look, I mentioned I would play that clip. You might as well hear it. As far as passports go, we had the Minister, Karina Gould, on yesterday. Now, I know he said, just off, I guess, towards the top of the interview, you may have heard him say, well, there will be some cases. She took a very different tone in explaining who could and couldn't get their passports processed. Listen to this.
The majority of Canadians will not be able to apply for or renew a passport.
Not
By
be able.
law, passport services are essential and a priority only in emergency or humanitarian situations. Humanitarian and/or emergency situations are defined as follows: passport clients at risk of financial hardship, passport clients who rely on travel as a source of employment and whose income security will be jeopardized without access, passport clients who must travel for medical reasons or who have had a death or illness in the family and whose situation is deemed urgent. Passport applications that do not meet these criteria will not be considered essential and will not be processed.
So it sounds different to me. That's not very many people who will be able to get those passports processed. So please keep that in mind. This idea, like it was last summer when we were having all these issues, I got to travel in 2 days. I have a ticket.
No.
That's not going to fly this time around. You'll have to meet those conditions. Otherwise, you're not going to be getting your passport. Keep that in mind.
They just got to wrap this up.
Yeah.
They have got to wrap this up before services are affected in any kind of grave way.